accuse the SNP of a gross betrayal of their own voters. Our political editor, Brian Taylor, reports.
John Swinney came to Holyrood to praise his council spending plans. He ended up burying a flagship funding policy, but he insisted the SNP would try again if they won the next election.
The Cabinet has therefore decided not to introduce legislation to abolish the unfair council tax and replace it with a local income tax until after the election in 2011. But make no mistake, this government will fight that election to win a parliamentary majority that backs the abolition of the unfair council tax.
Ministers had wanted to scrap the council tax you pay on property values and bring in a tax on income, pegged at 3 pence in the pound through a near £500 million subsidy. But they say the UK government now also plans to cut Scotland's budget by £500 million next year. The Holyrood sums are tricky too. The Liberal Democrats back local income tax, but Labour and the Conservatives are resolutely against. The Greens don't like it either, and Margaret MacDonald said Holyrood needed full tax powers first. But this was a key SNP manifesto pledge, and opponents said the voters had been misled.
I think it's the biggest climb down, the most humiliating about turn that we've seen since devolution started. And I think really Alex Salmond's administration is in meltdown now.
It's clearly a humiliating climb down, exposing this policy for nothing more than a cheap campaigning slogan.
This is a betrayal, and the need for reform is still there, but it's only the Liberal Democrats who are making that case at this time.
This is about money, accumulating worries about cost. The cost of pegging the local income tax, the planned local income tax to 3 pence in the pound, added, say ministers, to £500 million of cuts coming down the line from Whitehall. Plus, ministers want and need to keep the business organisations on side at a time when the battle is on to combat recession, and the business organisations loathe local income tax. Brian Taylor, reporting Scotland, Holyrood.
Our political correspondent Glenn Campbell is in Holyrood tonight for us. Glenn, a key election pledge. How much embarrassment does this cause the SNP?
I think it is embarrassing when politicians promise to do something and then fail to deliver. They tend to lose some credibility in the process. And if you voted for the SNP on the strength of their manifesto commitment to abolish the council tax and replace it with a local income tax, then you're entitled to feel disappointed. The question is, will you blame the SNP for failing to deliver, or like the SNP, will you blame the UK government for not supplying the funds, or opposition rivals to the SNP here at Holyrood for not giving this overhaul of local taxation their backing? The choice on that is yours. Opposition parties here at Holyrood, though, are convinced that it's not just local income tax that has died today, that the SNP has killed off some of its credibility in the process.
Glenn, thank you. A doctor has told a murder trial of the injuries she found on a 23-month-old boy shortly after he died. The paediatrician said Brandon Muir had a series of scratches and bruises and was unkempt. His mother, Heather Boyd, denies killing him by failing to get him medical treatment. Her partner, Robert Cunningham, denies murder. Andrew Anderson was in court.
Whereas across the whole of the UK, it's 6.4%. Behind all the numbers, though, you'll find real stories from real people.
Scottish. So could things ever again get as bad as this? In the late 1920s, Scottish unemployment reached 28%. Whilst in the early 1980s, the dole queues hovered around the 11% mark. Now though, we could be heading for 8.4% unemployed by the end of 2009. So says one London economic consultancy.
Today's figures give a good indication on what direction the Scottish economy is heading. We expect 175,000 people to be unemployed.
Mistake and look to the future, and I'm sure everything will for all those who are in my situation.
Well, such an attitude should actually see Douglas start in a new job in the care and the community sector within the next few months. As for the rest of us, well, uncertain times seem to lie ahead as we watch the rise and rise of Scottish unemployment. Jackie.
Of grieving families. TSB has ducked questions from MPs about whether political pressure was placed on the bank to take over HBOS. Giving evidence to the Treasury Committee, Eric Daniels simply replied it was a good purchase. The Chief Executive of RBS, Stephen Hester, said he understood the public's anger and promised there would be no bonuses at board level for anyone associated with the bank's losses.